Continuing with our breaking news this hour, we are learning more now about the breach at the Office of Personnel Management. We want to bring in retired U.S. Colonel Cedric Leighton. He is the former NSA Deputy Training Director. So we're learning more about this, and what we're learning is even more concerning. So what are your thoughts as to, first, who could be behind this breach? Security clearance, background information, all taken.
Right. Well, every indication, Lori, is that it points to the Chinese. Everything, from what we call in the business a tradecraft perspective, in other words, how an intelligence agency goes about doing things, there's the hallmarks of what the Chinese would be after. Russians could also have possibly done it, but there are other indicators of a more technical nature that say that the Chinese People's Liberation Army Intelligence Directorate is behind this effort. So what they ended up doing was they ended up taking information from the so-called SF-86 forms that intelligence and other people with clearances fill out when they get either they get their initial security clearance or they get their security clearance renewed, usually in a 5-year update process. And that information by its very nature is incredibly sensitive, and what it could potentially do is unmask all of the people not only with security clearances, but also those who have security clearances who are vulnerable to financial blackmail, to other things that are potentially derogatory in their personnel files. So
what do these federal workers do at this point?
Well, this is a real problem because the standard answer in these cases is to monitor your accounts, make sure your credit cards aren't being used in an unapproved way. But this is far, far more serious than that. And what it means is that they are going to have to be on the lookout for any effort made to exploit them in one way or the other. They have to look out not only for overt attempts to get at them and to turn them for purposes, but they also are looking for other things that are out there. So it's a very tough area that requires a lot of work.
Colonel, I'm sorry to interrupt. I do want to come in here. We've got additional details here with our breaking story. Federal authorities are now saying that there was a second intrusion discovered as part of this entire OPM breach. So to your point, the people behind it, Chinese people, what they're going to do with it. Have we heard everything now, or what would be the next detail to sort of drip out, do you think?
Well, I think the details that will drip out will be the extent of, how many people are affected. Reports are as high as 14 million people possibly being affected by this. So it's not just the federal employees, but all of the people that they're related to, all their friends. All of these people could potentially be affected by it. The next worst thing that can happen is that identities of intelligence agents get unmasked, and those databases are supposed to be kept separate from the standard government database, but there is a significant possibility that some of that information could have been affected by this. So it's very serious from an intelligence standpoint.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh my goodness.
Could basically set everything back for years.
Well, here's some figures for you, Colonel. With the second intrusion that's been reported, you're looking at more than 4 million federal employees. 4 million federal employees who've had their personal information hacked. I mean, where do you go from here? I know I'm repeating myself at this point, but the numbers are staggering.
They are. And then when you have people who aren't even associated with the federal government, let's say, my friends and, my colleagues' friends who were interviewed for security clearance purposes, that number could go way higher than that. So, the estimates are as high as 14 million. And, the implications for everybody, first of all, the good news is that the Chinese all of a sudden have a sea of data to drown in. The bad news is that with data mining techniques, they can find a lot of what they're looking for very quickly, even with that volume of data. And so we're looking at some really serious consequences for people and possible misuse of their identities, from the standpoint not only of classic espionage, but also from phishing campaigns when it comes to, sending viruses to people and doing things like that. And we've already seen about 23,000 emails associated with government accounts being released on the dark web.
All right. So this is going to be some investigation, and we're going to follow it to the T. In the meantime, Colonel Cedric Leighton, thank you so much for your expertise.